Coming up, it's day number 2 and maybe scenario number 2 for the Brooklyn Nets in the upcoming draft. Will lottery odds be almost perfectly in their favor? Landing second overall, landing Dylan Harper, and putting a franchise point guard in the backcourt? Come on now, let's talk about it. All coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And Doug, like we promised all the way back on yesterday, we're going to go every single one of these scenarios when it comes to the draft and the potential that the Brooklyn Nets take that 9% chance at number 1 overall and maybe just spike slightly better than the 7th or 8th slot that we think they're most likely going to land.
Yeah, so we talked about Cooper Flagg yesterday, and I think we have a draft that lines up pretty clearly here around like where at least the 1 and 2 are going to be. And it's going to be Cooper Flagg number 1. It's going to be Dylan Harper number 2, unless something crazy changes between now and then. So I think that we can, outline this. I mean, maybe at day 3, we just go kind of chalk and then, see where we go from there. But at least now there's not really much discussion around who's going 1 and who's going 2. And for a draft that's supposed to be, borderline generational, at least when you have someone at the top, we have a guy in Dylan Harper who the Nets right now 13.4% chance of hitting the number 2 pick in the draft. So 14% for number 1, 13.4. That's a little high. I read the wrong one. I'll get the odds in a second. I'm just realizing I read the top odds for that one. But regardless, we have a situation where they are going to, there's a chance that they can have one of these 2 guys. It's unlikely, but Dylan Harper, as it stands now, if you do not get Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper's a guy that would have gone first like last year for sure. Right. And so not maybe a generational talent, but an NBA ready guard now who has pretty high upside on like what his overall skill set is, which I'm excited to talk about here. So this is a type of situation where it's like, yeah, you'd be disappointed to not get Cooper Flagg. If the Nets pick second, though, there would be enough excitement going forward for like this franchise to be like, yes, like this is a guy that the team can build around long term, because Harper just definitely 100% has those skills.
Yeah, and just to clarify it, 9.2% chance for the Brooklyn Nets to land the second overall pick. And in these top 4, 9.4 for the third, 9.6 for the fourth. And then we know the bigger numbers are obviously trending towards 7 and 8 specifically, and even a little bit there marginally back all the way to 9. But to your point, I mean, listen, when we talked about it yesterday, just so everybody knows, go check the episode. We both were on board with the Nets drafting Cooper Flagg at 1. That was just a big takeaway that we had from that one. But to your point, it's rare that in a draft, when you talk about wanting to spike the odds and want to tank and be bad, that even if you don't get the number 1, you can still get legitimately and fully excited about having the second overall pick. And for Dylan Harper and from a Brooklyn Nets perspective, I thought about this just before we were starting, that he represents something that, yes, the Brooklyn Nets had briefly in Kyrie Irving or had in James Harden when he chose to be more the facilitator in his time here. But to legitimately think about having a 15-year cornerstone backcourt ball handler on your team at 6'6", 220, like all of the elements of Dylan Harper's game and skill set and position would be something we've been waiting for Brooklyn Nets as a franchise to get back with consistency. And frankly, one of the reasons why I think so many fans battle and say, Cam Thomas can do it, be guy. You're like, I don't think he really can, but I get why you want him to be, because the team has desperately needed it for so many years.
Yeah, like, so, and I guess it's like maybe excited to think about having a point guard in here, like someone that's kind of an offensive engine, someone that can just have the ball in his hands a lot, that has like some, high upside playmaking ability. Like, you can just like, there's like tangible outcomes to what he's doing each time up the court, because he's the engine of an offense. Everything will run through him. He is a traditional point guard in a lot of ways, like the ways that even like old school people will think about like the point guard position. Dylan Harper has that in his bag, comes from an NBA background, which I always love too. I always love when these guys are like sons of players. Because more than anything, it's like, okay, well, they have the requisite skill, but I don't even know if I have good metrics on this, but I always just feel like they understand like the business of it too, like the work ethic, what it takes to grow up in a locker room, like that stuff. I think that stuff really matters. And again, maybe I just am influenced by some guys it's worked for, but like, how could it not, right? Like if you have the
And
requisite
Ron
skill,
Harper
this is,
probably
by the
a
way,
good example of to interrupt. Ron Harper, not superstar elite, player at the NBA level. Amazing career. Everyone wants to have it, but I always find too that those father to son, comps or trickle downs for how they handle the business. I think it's good when it's a guy that's like, well, that dude honed craft and did everything he could, right, and ground out his career to be as ultra successful as he was. But it was probably a requirement that he be a harder worker than anybody else, a bigger film nerd than anybody else, made sure to be on great teams with great players, obviously. But that part of it, I think, is even more critical than just coming from lineage of greatness, right? You could be Kevin Durant's son. Doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be Kevin Durant, but you can learn work ethic. You can learn good habits as a pro.
Of course. So you have all these things in place. And then when it actually comes to the skills too, like Dylan Harper for sure has those, right? He has two things. One, he has the requisite size. Like he's big. He's a 6'6" point guard, 6'10" wingspan. And so we talk a lot about just like size on this podcast because it's just not something you can get better at. Like you're either tall and have a long wingspan or you don't. And it's not something you can just like improve for yourself. And when you don't have those two things get really a lot harder for you on the court. Like it's just harder to guard. It's harder to guard different positions. It's harder to get around. It's harder to get around guys. It's harder to just get into passing lanes. It's just everything's harder. It gets easier when you can move fluidly as like a big body with a big wingspan. So Harper has that built in. And then second of all, he just has on ball skills that are representative of like exactly what you want to see in an NBA guard, right? He can already run pick and roll. He gets to the rim. I'll go through a couple of these other things too, like after the break, but like he gets to the rim. He can finish at the rim. He can finish with both hands at the rim. He is a lefty, which I want to talk about like also like the lefty piece of it, because I have thoughts here too, but he does all those things really, really well. He has poise. The shooting could probably improve a little bit. He got given a lot of grenades at Rutgers. And like they just had like only two guys who could shoot. And that was kind of the end of it. And every team knew that. I do have some concerns about like how Rutgers wasn't better. And I think we can talk about that also. But overall, if you're just looking at like NBA ready guys who could step in and just have the game be slow enough for them to start where it's like not totally overwhelming, then you're just like, this is kind of the guy. Like this is, and I'm not sure how many other point guards, McCade's kind of like this. Like, I'm not sure how many tons of other point guards have come in that I think day one ready, like out of the box. And what you see from him is like, he wouldn't win a championship as year one, but I don't think he would be overwhelmed by any stretch of the imagination. Like if you look at like, Portland, if you watch Scoot at the beginning of his career, it's like, ooh, it looks like it's moving a little fast for him. Right. But he was also like a downhill athletic kind of point guard, and Dylan Harper's just not in the same mold. So I think there's like other things. There's a bunch of other things to get into with Dylan Harper, but I think the easy part is if you drafted him, if the Nets drafted him, I think we could like be incredibly happy around that outcome, because I think you would say like, this is a guy who has a long career ahead of him.
100% coming up here in a second. I'll give a cross-sport comp that could have the Brooklyn Nets finding extreme value at when they maybe draft Dylan Harper. We'll do that plus the for Brooklyn and that day one impact that Doug referenced. Pretty important if you could walk in game 1 of 82 with your starting point guard in that court. We'll do that here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at CarGurus. Look, shopping for a car should be exciting. It should not be exhausting. And we know that this can be the case when you're shopping for a car. You get the confusing prices. You got hidden fees. It can feel overwhelming. That's why you got to love using CarGurus. They help you cut through the noise, show you the best deals with full confidence. They got over 4 million. You're ready for this number? 4 million listings in CarGurus. Has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the U.S. They verify dealers. They provide real price analysis, give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice. You're not going to be second guessing yourself. You need a deal that you can trust. CarGurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. No wonder similar web estimated traffic data shows CarGurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your car today with CarGurus at CarGurus.com. Go to CarGurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's CarGurus.com, CarGurus.com. And when you're done with that, head on over to our friends at Wayfair. Maybe you got a truck and you want to get that, you want to get some furniture going from here to there. That's why you're going to go over to our friends over at Wayfair. Spring is here. It means it's home project season. Whether you're refreshing a room, tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. You got those small updates. Maybe you want some stylish cabinet hardware. You want some major upgrades, new vanity sinks, outdoor lighting. Wayfair has quality products for every single budget. Got fast and free shipping. Makes it so easy. You're not going to be hauling heavy items from the store. You didn't get the truck. Maybe you'll still be able to anyway. I love that they have top brands like GE and Moan at great prices. Shopping super seamless. You're going to find exactly what you need to fit your space and your style. Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home.
All right. So as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, tongue twister. I got to figure out what the name of this show is. Talking about Dylan Harper, number 2 overall pick. What happens if the Brooklyn Nets land in that 2 spot in the upcoming NBA draft? Obviously, May 12th, we'll get the reveal from the NBA where the lottery fall and Brooklyn ultimately shakes out. Side note, we're always up front. We're honest with you. The tech's not working for me right now. So if it's a little bit glitchy, I look a little twitchy, thank you for bearing with us. Hopefully, my sultry sounds are coming through in your ears, if not your eyes. Dylan Harper, I know we want to get into skill set. You mentioned being left-handed and what that can mean as well. One funny thing, I'll just sidebar here because I just went through this watching the NFL draft for the New York Giants. They ended up trading up in the first round. Jackson. Hey man, if pedigree doesn't mean something, Shedeur Sanders was the 2nd overall at one point consensus pick for the draft. Suddenly gets taken in the 5th round. Maybe the Brooklyn Nets get an opportunity at the 2nd overall pick to say we're going to trade out. We're going to trade out big time. We're going to come back around in the NBA's 5th round, and we'll pick up Dylan Harper. At that point, though, it doesn't seem like his father is as involved in his son's career.
Shedeur Sanders gets a grenade thrown in here just out of nowhere. I don't know. He's had a bad enough weekend. Okay, so with Dylan Harper too, yeah. No, I don't think there's going to be a situation where like that's where that ends up happening. I think I think we will see shakeups starting at 3, although I still think they probably end up going chalk there, and then the real decisions go from 4 on. We'll see. It really depends on internal evaluations on Ace Bailey, who we will talk about tomorrow, because he's I think consensus 3, but I think that's where it starts to get a little shakier around. Yeah, not everyone is 100% there on him. Dylan Harper, though, one thing I love lefties. I'm convinced Harden, Brunson are the 2 that come to mind. These lefty point guards. Now they are among the biggest foul merchants you've ever seen, and I hate watching their game like this. Now Harper did not do this in college. He was at the rim finisher. Again, he finished with his right hand a ton, even for a lefty. You just can't really, it's very hard to defend him when he gets down there because he can finish in both ways. And he just overall just has the skills. But I'm convinced, I think lefties have such a distinct advantage, and there's very few of them. They have such a distinct advantage on offense because it's very simple. Everyone is used to guarding righties for their whole life, that you just have these ingrained muscles that this is how you guard a righty. Now, some guys are good at going right and left, and some guys are better than others. All NBA players can go left also for the most part, especially if you're a point guard. But usually there's one side favors the other. Just the fact that your dominant dribbling hand is your left hand, I'm totally convinced that plays a much bigger factor than is usually recognized. Because it's just you have to retrain your brain to defend it for guys who live off muscle memory. And just having Harper be able to shoot lefty, he can get up in the mid range. He can shoot from 3. He's got a little bit of a low release, but I think that's probably fine because he's a little taller. Overall, I think to me, the lefty thing plays so well for the NBA. Again, Harden and Brunson are brutal with this, with the fouls, but it's also their style being lefty also means you just get fouled more, because people are used to defending it more. So I think they lean into it completely, and I hate it. I also think even if they didn't lean into it, they would still get fouled more, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because I just think that it's much harder to defend these guys as a lefty because everyone else is ready. So it's maybe it's a little too reductive, but I just like that part of his game too. And you could see it in the tape. Guys just had besides just the athleticism, besides just the overall skills, there's just this other piece that made him just slightly more difficult to defend. And I'm just for it. So there's no case really against him at number 2. I think there's some downside. Maybe you worry about the efficiency of the shooting. Maybe some of that needs to come around as he gets into the game. But it's he just has so many check marks already filled out for his game for this position in a way that when we talk about other point guards, they just don't have. They're going to be missing one or more of the things that Harper already has, like sort of in his bag.
Yeah. I know, I agree with you. And by the way, it's like it's the cross matching of limbs, right? So I mean, you think about it offensively and what it means, because you're right. It doesn't matter. I mean, defenders, NBA players, athletes like that, you're obviously working on every range of skill set, but because you defend against righties more, you open up your hips a certain way to defend against them, right? You're going to lead, by the way, also typically with your dominant hand when it comes potentially to defending, depending on which way you want to gear the offensive player to go. So it's just probably those little things that always benefit lefties. From a Dylan Harper standpoint, if you're going to be talking about the defensive end as well, again, cross matchup on a guy that's going to be shooting with his right hand versus his left-handed dominant or just left-sided dominant probably feeds into that a little bit as well. So I tend to agree. Let's put it this way. Can't hurt him. The other thing that I thought was like worth pointing out here, you mentioned it when it comes to Rutgers. I do want to get into that and the lack of quality that team overall ended up putting out, which includes Dylan Harper and includes Ace Bailey. When you go look at the big board and you see when they just throw up, hey, here's the generic stats that you're getting from all these guys. When you see 4.5 assists per game from Dylan Harper, that's the first one that I like circle, double underline, and put asterisks next to and say, yes, but put him on an NBA roster with, a Cam Johnson, with an evolving shooting Noah Clowney, right? With some of these other guys, with Cam Thomas. Those assist numbers, I think, are one of those things. You can do this for a lot of guys in the draft because he played at Rutgers. And because outside of those two elite talents, there wasn't a lot of elite talent on that team. I think you look at that category and talk about his facilitation, setting the tables for others, and because he has that size, get downhill, go towards the basket, as being something that probably translates even better from a pure box score standpoint when he gets to the pros on a possession-over-possession basis.
Yeah, for sure. You just need to have the physicality, right? Like you just need to have some of those things. Like you need to be able to translate that stuff. You need to have that stuff to be able to step in day one and just be able to begin competing. When you're undersized, when you're all these other things, you need to have the physicality. You need to have all this other stuff. Well, let me ask you this. Let me pivot real quick. How much do you worry about the Rutgers thing? They didn't even make the tournament. They had two of the top. Yeah. Theoretically, they have two of the top 3 guys who are going to go in the draft here, and they didn't make the tournament. Like, is that a feature? Is it a bug? Like, is it like I didn't watch tons and tons of Rutgers this year, if I'm just being honest. So like, I don't have a good basketball case for this, but I just think it strikes me as so weird. Like that is like, I think that's a huge red flag. I really do think that's a huge red flag. In a way that I'm not really sure I can quantify, and maybe that's too loaded of a question, but.
Yeah, I wonder about it's like the Ace Bailey of it all, right? So you're Ron Harper, you're Ace Bailey, you're trying to decide where you're going to go and play ball, and maybe you see that the other one and the other, you're going to overlap your time there, so there's value. You're going to get another player. I mean, listen, 2 other top 3 picks in the draft, right? Are these 2 guys? I don't know. Well, we do know because you saw the results. It's not like Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey playing at Rutgers or committing to Rutgers then attracted the next tier of guys, right, to be the supporting cast for them. I don't know. I think you're fair to say it could be a red flag. I don't know if I read a lot into it. In some ways, okay. I probably chalk it up as like, you're going there, Franklin Lake's hometown, New Jersey. Like, you're from the area. You want to stay local. Rutgers probably pings in your brain on a totally different level than it does for almost anybody outside of this. I had a conversation with another host on the network a couple months ago. I said Rutgers, and they didn't know that it was a college, right? So that maybe played a factor too. So long as the skill set developed, and clearly it did because he's the 2nd overall prospect in a deep draft class, no, probably not. Right? Like, would I feel better if he played at Duke? Yeah. If it was him alongside Cooper Flagg, yeah, you'd feel even more confident about it and probably would have got this really NBA-ready sample size because you're looking at the other lone generational talent, right? So I probably pushed past the red flag of like playing at a smaller school, less competitive school, or a school that didn't make it into the tournament, where maybe we would have seen for him or Ace Bailey a more significant showing when it comes to what they're capable of the highest level.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, I probably overdoing it. It's just something that was sat in the back of my mind all year. It was like, I don't know. If you're this good, you really should.
Yeah.
Maybe we can make a team of 64 tournament of guys like that. Most of them aren't going to the NBA, and none of them are the consensus number 2 and 3 pick. Like if I'm just stacking up talent from some of these other teams. Now, coaching, maybe there's just a massive drop off in talent after these guys. I'm sure there's other stories here, but I always just find it's a little weird. It's just a little weird that they couldn't get all the way there based just on talent. All right, we're gonna get into a little more Dylan Harper stuff. We'll touch on a little bit of NBA playoffs, maybe a little Giannis stuff here.
Let's touch it
in a second. We'll get into that here in just one moment. For that, you can tell your friends over at Gametime. Look, nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge, electric in the arena. Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices in the app actually go down. Got that in bold, down as the tip-off gets closer. Their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. You can grab those last-minute deals at 60% off buying last-minute sports, concerts, comedy, theater. It's all there on Gametime. My kid got concert tickets over on Gametime. She was trying to buy them on another marketplace, and I was like, come on, enough with this mess. We literally went over to Gametime, did the code, done. So easy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets at lowest price guaranteed.
All right, so to tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about scenario number 2, the Brooklyn Nets, second overall pick. Dylan Harper is the selection, and what does it mean for this team? We'll talk a little about the roster. Doug mentioned taking a little peek at the NBA playoffs. The conversation on Giannis seems to be growing even louder as they are going to seemingly 3-1 down against the Pacers, make a first-round exit here. One last thing I want to point out on the Dylan Harper side of it, when I'm specifically talking about the assist numbers. So we know, drive and kick, it's a thing of beauty, right? Perimeter shooting, NBA level, it's a thing of beauty. When you go over and look at the Rutgers basketball team for the season, you mentioned shot needs to improve for Dylan Harper. He was 33% from beyond the arc. 34.6% was one Ace Bailey from deep on 136 attempts. After that, Doug, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm looking through the numbers here, and I'm not lying about it. First time I really got my eyes on it. Zach Martini, he had a decent on 80 attempts, shot 36%, but it's not a high volume. Only one other player, 97 attempts, which was Tyson, who shot 39%. But there's a lot of really bad shooters, is the point I'm going to make here when it comes to perimeter looks, right? So when you think about some of these numbers and you think about why wasn't the team good enough, should they have been better with those two guys? Almost certainly they should have been, but I've got a lot of dudes lingering in the low 20s when it comes to three-point shooting on that roster. It's going to skew the numbers, and maybe in some of these instances, it's going to skew the ability to look at that season and say, why weren't they in the playoffs? Why weren't these two players able to be better? The one thing I'll save this for tomorrow. I think there's a part of the conversation about Dylan Harper that directly associates with Ace Bailey and some of the things we've been hearing about him leading up to the draft too. What are your other thoughts when we talk about looking at this roster impact on it? We discussed it with Cooper Flagg yesterday. Again, put him in the backcourt, Dylan Harper, with Cam Thomas alongside him in the upcoming season. That's something you can get really excited about if they're swapping heights in terms of role and what they could potentially do together on the offensive end.
You get a guard that actually can defend other guards. Like when it's Cam and D'Lo, it's like, well, you don't have anyone that can defend opposing guards. When you have Cam and Dylan Harper, who's just like a bigger body and more length and more athletic than Cam is, and just frankly profiles to be a significantly better defender than him, you can play them together and not really give it back as much, right? And then if you have guys like Clowney and Claxton at the 4 and 5, let's say Clowney starts or Zaire Williams or whatever, it's like, okay, it gets a lot easier on defense. So I think like the impact on the roster would make it easier to play for sure, Cam. They can play together, I think, for sure, which is not going to be the case for some of these other point guards that we're going to mention like later on in this stuff. Like it gets harder. And I don't think you draft on need anyway, so like whatever. But with Harper, you're like, okay, that would pair okay. It's just like the reason he's consensus where he is now is because there's certain guys. Flagg qualifies here too, and many other like top picks. It's like, it doesn't matter who you have. These guys can play. Like when you're plug and play because the size is already there and you have some other pieces, like it doesn't matter. It's like you're fit independent. It's like you fit anywhere. Like if Dylan Harper would fit on a team that also had another point guard, like because he's just so big and a good on the ball, right? So, the Nets aren't in that situation. But if Charlotte got the number 1 pick, it's like you can play LaMelo Ball and Dylan Harper together. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they're okay. Like it's maybe it isn't ideal, but you can for sure do it. Like that's the dream of guys like this. It's like, it doesn't matter who else you have. He just plays with everyone. And you can't say that about everyone. You can say that a lot about wings, the guys who are 3s and 4s. You can't say it about every center, and you can't say it about every point guard, but you can say about guys like him. So I think that's just sort of the dream of a guy like that. It's like, get him and then pick whoever next. It'll fit. Right? Yeah. Like next best guy. You're never, ever, ever worried about fit after that. All right. So Dylan Harper, you want to just we want to talk the Bucks, the end of the Bucks here, or like you want to talk the KD thing?
The voices are certainly getting louder. It's been pretty fascinating. Down 3-1 against the Pacers. You have Damian Lillard, the injuries, and everything else. It wasn't a season to remember for Milwaukee in a lot of ways, but it does seem as loud as ever about this could be the end for Giannis in Milwaukee. But a lot of things you see from a lot of Nets fans, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's over on other social platforms, there's been a pretty collective pushback on the idea of going for Giannis. Some people will give you the other side of the coin, which I think they should. You get an incredible talent. I don't take full credit for it. I think you and I deserve like 98.8% of it. There's probably some margin in there of error of getting a superstar when your roster is as currently constituted does not make a deep playoff team. You're looking at Milwaukee. Injuries aside, they are going to get bounced in the first round of the Indiana Pacers, a really good team. But I think there's just been a bit of a shift here in perspective. Do you think where is the non-Brooklyn Nets place for Giannis to land in your mind? If it's finally done in Milwaukee and it's time to say, like, hey, where do I go at 30, 31 years old to start the next 5, 7, 8, 10-year chapter of my NBA career?
Yeah, I think the Nets are going to get bailed out here to some degree because they're just not going to be able to put together the best offer, I think. We talked about this on a previous podcast, but I'll just reiterate it real quick. Like, I think the Nets would like Giannis, and I think that would be the correct – there's a world where it's the correct move. This version of them is just too far away, and the reason we know is because we're watching a Giannis team with more talent than the current Nets getting dumpstered by the Pacers, right? And so, like, they already have more talent. Like, even without Dame, Brook Lopez, Portis, like, even Kevin Porter would start. Kevin Porter Jr. would start for the Nets, like, right now. And he's starting for this. He's starting for the Bucks tonight. Like, Gary Trent Jr., like, a lot of these guys would have just been better, some of the better guys in the team. Now, it wouldn't be that much to get to, like, that same level as the Bucks are now, but you have to be so far beyond it to even contend. Again, this team is getting killed with Giannis playing, like, peak Giannis basketball. He's been amazing. And this team is just getting boat raced through the playoffs. And they're probably going to get swept. And so I think with the Nets, like, I think they would like to put, if he came on the market, they would put in offers, but they have two big problems here. One, they're so far away from building a team around him that when you combine with whatever they have to give away to get him, it would just make it hard. And I get it. They have a lot of picks. They run out quick when you're trading for Giannis, because the other thing they would have to overpay with Giannis is they'd have to overpay in picks to get him because they don't have young talent to send back. And the Bucks need young talent because they cannot tank. The Bucks don't have like any picks for the next like 6 years because of the Dame and Drew trades. So the Bucks can't go into the tank without him. So they need to get guys back. So long story short, when Giannis goes up, it's not going to be a Luka one-team bidding war in the middle of the night, almost for sure. Who's going to come calling? Everybody. And everyone's going to have more players to send back. And that's the key. Rockets, Magic, Spurs, Raptor. They probably won't do it, but Raptors, Jazz, Portland, anybody, like literally anybody. And Portland actually is like one of these places that kind of makes sense because they have some of those Milwaukee picks. So Milwaukee could go into the tank with getting something back. Point being, all these teams can do the thing that the Nets cannot do, which is send back the talent that the Bucks would need to keep their head above water, because they're going to be like the Nets were 2 years ago, where they couldn't tank. And we saw exactly how that went. So I think the Nets are going to get kind of like mini bailed out here, that they're just not going to have anywhere close to the best package. Yes, they can offer the most picks, but for the Bucks, that's like less important than taking back Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd, and like Tari Eason and picks from the Rockets or something like that, right? Or Scoot Henderson and picks from the Blazers, and all of a sudden, like you're playing Shaedon Sharpe and Giannis, right? You know what I mean? Like, just the Jazz have just tons of young guys and tons of picks. Now, maybe Giannis doesn't want to go play in Utah, and that's a problem. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just like all these. The Magic have young guys. Like, it's like maybe they're just like, I don't know, the Magic, like Franz and would pair him Paolo and Paolo and Giannis show or whatever. Cause like we know this team has a ceiling. Like, I guess like people are just, there's a group of Nets fans out there. Last thing, I'm going long here. There's a group of Nets fans who have completely missed the other part of this. Yes, they have the most picks, but they have forgotten the part about Milwaukee's situation, which does not line up with what the Nets can give. Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton for Giannis.
Perfect.
Is laughed out of the building. It's laughed. It's laughed out of the building.
Laughed out. Yeah.
Like, that's and right. It's like, because it doesn't do anything for the Bucks. Like, so anyway, that's my long story. That's my end of the rant. I think the Nets get bailed out here.
And listen, I bring it up only because I think it's fascinating. It becomes interesting. Like when you start saying things like about the Magic, right? And pairing them with Paolo, you're like, oh, like just, frankly, from an NBA narrative standpoint, you just like the idea of thinking about other places that Giannis could play and who he might play with. The Brooklyn Nets aren't necessarily going to be that. Two things before we get out the door. One, I think it's fascinating. A team that doesn't have any real picks either. Why? Because they gave them all up when they were getting Kevin Durant. Listen, maybe Milwaukee doesn't want to be a team without a superstar talent on it. Maybe the Phoenix Suns want to get Giannis over there and try to pair him up with Devin Booker. There's some interesting things about desperation. And that ties back to when we had talked about Kevin Durant, like what's his value around the league? Well, if you're a team that maybe feels like you're about to go to the abyss and you're not a major market, fascinating there. Unlikely, obviously. And the other thing here is we did this yesterday with the Cooper Flagg. Nets get the number 1 overall pick. Would you trade it away potentially for player X? We brought up Luka. Hey, that might be the one that you would do. These are fake scenarios, made up possibilities. If you're 2nd overall and Milwaukee calls you and says, we're willing to trade you Giannis if we get that 2nd overall pick, it means Dylan Harper. And let's say it reduces it. Is that the kind of conversation you're willing to entertain if you're the Brooklyn Nets? I think it's fun to inform it based on player you would or would not be getting in the draft, and then obviously, what you're getting in return.
I think about that one a lot longer than Cooper Flagg. I didn't really like Cooper Flagg. I'm not really thinking about it. With Dylan Harper, I'm thinking about it, and
like fake scenario, real quick. Fake scenario. Let's just say Milwaukee wants 5 first-round picks and a couple of young players for Giannis trade, but you give us the 2nd overall and it's Dylan Harper. Now it only costs you 2 more first-round picks and a couple of young players. Right? Like if it reduces that draft capital commitment by 40 to 50%, then I think it becomes a real conversation for a lot of teams, whoever may be at the top of that draft potentially, right? Not just the Nets.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's closer, and I still probably wouldn't do it. But Dylan Harper, I don't think is like a lock's lock, like I think Cooper Flagg is. And so it's like I just, that no GMs ever want to do this, by the way, because it's like the easiest way to get fired when you can attach the name. This is why it's much better to trade draft picks like out into the future, where it's like everyone kind of forgets who the guys are. When you can attach the actual guy to the pick and you just know one for one, it's the dude. Like it's like, well, when you trade Markelle Fultz for Jason Tatum, it's like you're getting fired time, right? That's why it's like really hard to do that stuff. But like you trade the 2029 pick, it's like, okay, great, nobody remembers. Like or it's like, okay, well that became the guy, but it's like those guys are long gone anyway. Okay,
we're gonna get out of here. Have better basketball. Not care that you gave that away down the road too, right?
Exactly. That's why like Tatum was like, or Tatum or Jaylen Brown, one of those guys was like the Nets pick, but like, I don't know, Nets fans think about that a little bit, but you don't hear it brought up tons, right? And that's just the difference in how the timeline gets a little skewed. Okay. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets over on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe over anywhere you listen to podcasts as well. Number 1 way to help the show.
Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. Killed my father. Prepare to die. And that is from The Princess Bride.
One of the all-time great poets. We're back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Oh, basketball, yeah.